Hello, my name is Rodriguez, and I'm going to be presenting with my teammate Alejandro Vega Garcia. We're going to be talking about the differences between Mexico and the United States regarding transparency and the creation of policies that aid transparency itself. First, as an introduction, we need to talk about that these countries are very similar. One usually thinks a lot about the differences, the cultural differences, and mostly the economic differences, but they're very similar. They have huge differences, mostly cultural, like I mentioned, and from the creation of its own political system. There's a lot of history in the creation of its political system, and we are not going to get a lot of into the details about it, but they are more noticeable the longer you look into them. But so do similarities. So most of the difference come into play once we start mentioning our main topic, transparency. But when we're talking about the political system itself, they have a lot of similarities. Well, what are the political differences between Mexico and the US? Well, what are politics? And what do political mean? Politics refers to the activities related to governance, which is made by those in power. Curiously enough, both of them share and differ in how these activities are carried out. And although we do keep the same titles, we're going to get a little bit into more detail about it. But those in power are what changes most of the time. But the activities themselves, what you do with power, is mostly universal. You can do anything you want with power. And there needs to be policies to control how power is used. What is power? It refers to the ability to influence actions. Well, like I was mentioning, both countries, power resides in certain political actors. We call them mayors, senators, governors, president, deputies, but some change name, such as the congressman, congresswoman, and federal deputies. They are very similar. They are part of the legislative power. Um, they are very. We have to talk about. They're very similar in the fact that they follow the process of the injuncture, so that he mentions that there are three separations of power, and the government itself, judicial system, the executive system, and the legislative system. Well, the branches actually, and well, both countries have these three branches of government. It's a very universal thing, and so we need to talk about what are some of the government types. What are some things that are not universal? Well, there are several government types, including parliamentary monarchies, which we have one technically in Canada. They have a prime minister, and technically they are still ruled by the monarch, which is the King of England. We have federal republics, and we have central republics. These are very similar in the fact that they have a president, but the way in which they distribute power within themselves, that's different. In this case, both of them are federal republics. They have a president, but each state has its enough sovereign power in which they can decide how they can handle things between in their boundaries. They cannot go beyond that. When we're talking about beyond them, we're going to talk about federations, and that's the union between them.
The American two-party system, Democrats versus Republicans, reflects a clear ideological divide, liberals versus conservative. In Mexico, the spectrum is more diffuse. In the US, Democrats promote the welfare state and social rights. Republicans promote the free market and traditional values. On the other hand, in Mexico, Morena declares itself a nationalist left. The PAN is conservative, and the PRI no longer has a clear ideological identity, although it remains essentially a revolutionary center-left. Movimiento Ciudadano calls itself the Fourth Way and is social democratic. El Partido del Trabajo is a radical left-wing socialism party, and the Partido Verde is environmentalist and center-left. US elections are expensive, $14 billion in 2020, and depend on private donors. In Mexico, funding is public, depending on the percentage of vote cast per party, but political patronage distorts competition, and criminal corporations and organizations are believed to financially influence elections. Now, If we're talking about voting, abstention in Mexico is around the 14%, in the United States 30%. The reason? Both Mexicans and Americans trust their institution and question democracy is which they live. In the United States, the media are political actors like Fox News, right, and MSNBC left that polarize the debate. In Mexico, although the Televisa-TV Azteca duopoly has won it, the president's morning press conference have centralized the official narrative and overshadowed most national media outlets, focusing solely on the president's speech and appearance with the press. The United States has had the Freedom of Information Act in place since 1966. Federal agencies must respond within 20 days. Mexico has had a General Transparency and Access to Public Information Law since 2002, and authorities must be will respond within 10 days. However, processing information requests through both systems remains slow, bureaucratic, and reject hindering the right to have the current government's action made visible. Mexico ranks 126 in Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. The United States ranks 24. Why? Criminal penalties exist for withholding information. As those Mexico, the difference is that they are rarely applied or are not properly addressed. A clear example is the Ayotzinapa case. While in the United States a scandal of this nature will lead to independent investigative commissions, in Mexico there was institutional obstruction, censorship, concealment, and manipulation of information, according to the CNDH.
Conclusion, well, we need to talk about that there are differences. We go back to the same idea that we started the project on. There are differences, similarities, and some crossover between them. This is very much a very historical thing. At the end of the day, we're talking about two countries that share the continent. Where there are two countries located in Central America. Even though that one speak English, the other speak Spanish, there are a lot of similarities due to proximity. And well, the power of just the United States uh, cannot be just pushed over. The United States, as bigger representative of the Western world nowadays, needs to at least try and be the biggest forerunner of innovative policies, especially regarding transparency. We're talking about the one of the biggest countries in the world, the one of the most important countries in the world, being up north. Well, there are going to be a lot of similarities. Most of the time, due to pressure, more like a peer pressure of trying to be like them, and well, it shows up in the political system. But then it differs a lot in the actual actions of it. So I'm just going to show the references. It has been all for us. This is our final project for this course, and I have to thank you for your attention and have a great evening.